Hey there, everyone. I'm not going to talk that much about last episode today because I want to avoid spoiling it for anyone who's accidentally clicked this one first. But we got to see Moegi versus Kiba. That was fun, if not a little bit, absurd. But hey, that wasn't my choice. The Discord people made me do it. I don't have much else to say other than that, so make sure to comment, join the Discord, and share this playlist with like-minded individuals. On with the show. Morning had long since passed, and Konoha basked in the warmth of early afternoon. The village was alive in ways that words rarely captured. Not alive in the frantic sense of duty and missions, not in the sharp-edged drills of shinobi preparing for war. This was a different kind of life, the kind only possible during rare moments when all things seemed to take a sigh of relief. Children ran laughing through the main avenues, their sandals slapping playfully against sun-warmed stones. Small vendor stalls lined the walkways, offering skewers of pork and chilled yuzu tea. Parents and elders lingered in shaded corners, smiling faintly as they watched friends and neighbors trade jokes and idle gossip. Old rivalries and bitter grudges, if they existed, had melted quietly beneath the festival's sun. Even ninja, notorious for their pride and grudges, relaxed their guards today. Off-duty Genin and Chunin could be seen laughing together as they bartered good-naturedly over festival trinkets. A cloud ninja, arms full of prize-winning candy, shared his haul with the children around him, twin blades fastened securely to his back. Old wounds were forgotten here in these golden hours. Above it all, Konoha's banners danced lightly in the breeze, red and white against a sky so clear it seemed painted. The Chunin exams had brought in strangers, yes, but in these peaceful moments, they were no longer outsiders. They were all villagers today. Together. In one open plaza, performers dazzled gathered crowds with acrobatics and sleight-of-hand ninjutsu made for entertainment rather than combat. Elsewhere, elders played shogi beneath flowering trees, their laughter soft and measured. The clang of blacksmiths and the chatter of mission dispatchers, sounds so common, were gone, replaced by music and simple conversation. Even hardened shinobi, made now Anbu like Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy as they made their careful patrols above the rooftops, could feel the mood seeping in. A day like this did not happen often and hadn't for years. A day when Konoha's walls felt less like protection and more like open arms. But beneath their silent movements, the civilians knew none of what lay beyond this perfect world, this utopia. They did not feel the distant ripples. Somewhere beyond their laughter and lanterns, storm clouds gathered unseen. But here, for now, Konoha stood golden, unaware, and untouched. On the rooftops and walls that overlooked the dense forest boundary, Kakashi exhaled quietly behind his mask. The sound drowned in the drone of distant cheers from the arena. He adjusted the gloves of his Anbu uniform, an old habit, though they fit perfectly. Beside him, Might Guy landed lightly from his patrol leap, dust rising faintly as his sandals met stone. 3 hours and counting, Guy muttered, tapping the handle of his kunai against his thigh idly. Not a single suspicious shadow. Even during the war, I don't remember Konoha being this lively. Kakashi didn't reply right away. He gazed past the spread of rooftops, past antennae and tiled ridges, until his single visible eye fell on the towering gates in the distance. Crowds had surged through them earlier that morning, citizens from other Land of Fire villages, merchant entourages, and various villagers from allied countries. Too many faces, too many stories. That's what's bothering me, Kakashi said softly. Guy raised a brow. Bothering? Kakashi, Konoha looks like a festival ground. No danger in sight. Shouldn't that be a good thing? Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly. Maybe too good. We spent the whole morning checking the south gates, the east storage sectors, the outer wall posts, and not once did anything feel off. That's just not normal. With crowds this big, strangers mixing shoulder to shoulder, someone always acts out. Someone always slips up. There were some drunks, according to the guards at the front gate, Guy pointed out. Yes, but nothing requiring an Anbu's attention, Kakashi sighed, shaking his head. Guy tilted his own head, considering. For all his boundless energy, he respected the quiet weight in Kakashi's tone. You think this piece might be staged? Guy asked eventually, serious now. No, Kakashi corrected, stepping forward and vaulting effortlessly to the next roof. I'm saying it feels too smooth, like we tightened every net and still didn't catch the small ones. Guy followed without argument. 10 minutes later, the hallways of the intelligence center were cooler, stone corridors muffling the sound of the outside world. Inoichi Yamanaka, freshly reinstated as head of Konoha's communications team, stood with his arms crossed before a large chakra map scribed onto the wall. Small colored lights flickered across its surface, representing Konoha's active sensory perimeter. Kakashi and Guy entered quietly. Inoichi didn't turn, though his voice welcomed them. You're late for your scheduled check-in. Kakashi gave a half-hearted shrug. Too many gates, too many guards. Not enough, Anbu. Thought we'd get a read from you directly. How's the barrier holding? Inoichi's fingers brushed the map lightly. No breaches, not even a tremor. Whoever's come for the exams, they entered through official channels. Ah, that's what we were afraid you'd say, Kakashi replied evenly. Inoichi frowned. Afraid? Kakashi glanced towards his partner. Inoichi, is it possible the crowd itself masked potential threats? Inoichi hesitated, lips tightening in thought. For a man so normally composed, the hesitation itself felt heavy. Yeah, he admitted. During peacetime events, we rely so much more on surface sweeps. Chakra suppression is a common courtesy, and the sheer density of people here makes deep scans difficult. Could we have missed dangerous individuals skilled in suppression techniques? Pains me to say, but possibly. The words hung thick in the air. Guy's lighthearted mood from earlier faded completely, his smile fading behind his Anbu mask. So even if someone did sneak in, they wouldn't have to be invisible. They just had to be average. Inoichi nodded grimly. Kakashi's hands slid into his pockets. That settles it. We're checking the outer patrols again, up close this time. As they turned to leave, Inoichi spoke again, his tone cautious. Kakashi, do you seriously think something's wrong? The white-haired shinobi paused briefly in the doorway, his eye shadowed. For a moment, his answer seemed uncertain. Then, his voice fell low and resolute. I don't know yet, but it's too crowded, and I've seen too many quiet storms begin like this. Minutes later, Kakashi and Guy sped silently along the tree-lined forest path skirting the interior walls of Konoha. Above them towered the inner vertical face of Konoha's walls, weathered by decades of rain and sun. The cheers of the exams had finally faded behind them. The woods were quiet here. But now, even the silence unsettled Kakashi. Feels like everyone's eyes are turned inward, Guy muttered, scanning the treetops. Nobody's watching the cracks anymore. Kakashi's response never came. Instead, he stopped mid-leap, landing abruptly and stiffly atop a low branch, his eye sharpened instantly. Do you hear that? Guy came to a halt beside him, brow tightening. Yes. What is that? Sounds like laughter, Kakashi guessed. The trees softened and dulled the sound to an extent that they couldn't determine what direction it came from, but it was so subtle that if they moved, they might move out of its range. But the laughter was strange, unsettling in their otherwise silent surroundings. It was unnatural, this disturbance, and thus became their duty to investigate. Without another word, they moved in unison, darting toward the subtle tremor that had cut through Konoha's forest silence like a splinter. For a moment, the forest was silent. Birds whistled and chirped to one another nearby. Everything was as it should have been. But for Hidan, still catching his breath after the kill, trying to wrench his scythe from his chest, paused, eyes flicking lazily toward Kiba, as if curious to see what might happen next. Kiba's shoulders trembled. The time for sorrow would be later. The time for weakness was no more. He fell into Akamaru's shoulder, grabbing a handful of his shaggy fur as he felt his loyal companion's heat already begin to dissipate. Blood trickled from his palms, torn open by his own claws, squeezing as tightly as he could. His eyes snapped open, wide and hollow seconds before, narrowed slightly, filling with animal hate, with rage. The tears wouldn't stop flowing, but his mouth twisted, teeth bared into something between a sob and a snarl. "You!" His voice broke violently as he launched forward. There was no strategy in his movement, no coordination, no jutsu, just raw, hateful speed. He tore across the path like a beast starved for days, finally unleashed to its prey, closing on Hidan without even pausing to draw weapons. But he never reached him. Sasuke was faster. Kiba didn't even register him until an arm slammed across his chest, clotheslining him brutally into the earth. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but he thrashed immediately, wild and furious. "Get off me!" Kiba howled, kicking and clawing like a rabid animal. "He killed him! He killed him!" Sasuke didn't flinch. He dropped low, forcing Kiba's shoulder back into the dirt, pinning his arms with practiced efficiency. Hidan began laughing maniacally, fueling Kiba's rage, but Sasuke was steadfast. Kiba's clawed hands dug into Sasuke's shoulders and arms as he savagely tried to break free, but Sasuke couldn't yield an inch. "You'll die," Sasuke hissed through clenched teeth, his eyes sharp and cutting. "You think charging him solves anything? You're handing him another kill. We don't know anything about him." Kiba didn't care. His face twisted with something raw and feral. "I don't care!" His chakra flared messily, uncontrolled and hot, pushing against Sasuke's steady pressure. It wasn't enough. "I care," Sasuke snapped back coldly, "and unless you come back to your senses, you're going nowhere." Kiba struggled harder, but Sasuke's words started to crack the edge of his frenzy. "How would you feel if he killed Naruto?" he complained angrily, not resting for even a moment. Sasuke had to give his all to keep him in place, but this question struck him off guard. He went his whole life trying to convince himself his family was the most important to him. That or Lord Hokage was the most important. He blinked. He had spent a great deal of his childhood in the company of Naruto. His own face twisted with a curiosity even while he grunted alongside Kiba as they wrestled for dominance. Was Naruto his best friend? Kiba was far from calming down. But his grief was powerful, so powerful that it kept awkwardly colliding with the rage in his chest now, making his efforts sloppy and uneven. "Let me go," Kiba growled lower, panting heavily. If you fail to hold me even once, I swear I'll kill him myself." "Kiba, he just stabbed himself in the chest, and he's perfectly fine," Sasuke reasoned. "We don't even know how to kill him." Above them, the girls moved. Sakura struck first, surging sideways from cover, hurling several shuriken. Hidan seemed to react slowly to the thrown weapons, and as they struck him, he yelped in pain before removing them from himself. Sakura squinted for a moment. If he wasn't going to flinch, Genjutsu wouldn't be nearly as effective. Genjutsu worked on those who had a shortcoming or mental distraction far more easily than those who were clear-headed. If Hidan didn't flinch, it was a good chance that he was highly confident in this situation. There was less for Sakura to exploit. "Tenten!" she shouted as she placed herself between Hidan and Sasuke and Kiba. A rain of kunai with explosive tags fell from above. Tenten was already on top of it. Hidan swept his scythe once and deflected most of it. Tenten would have used Hiramakere if not for the range they were intent on keeping until they could figure out exactly what his weird ability did. As the explosive tanks detonated, Sakura took several steps further from him, helping to push Kiba away as well, just in case Hidan might try to take advantage of the ensuing smoke. Tenten landed in amongst the smoke, and Ino dove in to help protect her, just in case. With several of the kunai, she had tied wire to one another. If he did try to take immediate action, he'd be tripping before anything else. "Earth style," Ino recited. "Mud wall jutsu!" Raising a wall to protect Tenten just in case, as the latter pulled out a scroll and conjured out a flail with a massive spikes at the end of its chain. As the dust began to settle, Tenten twirled with momentum, smashing the flail into the wall and sending its resulting debris exploding toward Hidan. Anything to keep him suppressed, as long as he couldn't hit them, as long as he couldn't move. As Hidan slowly became revealed, it became obvious he wasn't even trying to move, and took several of their attacks dead on. However, none of these attacks seemed to make him bleed. He had gashes across his arms, face, and chest, but no blood was let free, like he was a walking corpse. After Tenten's assault had quieted, they certainly heard him moaning in complaint of the pain they were inflicting. It was the most confusing opponent any of them had ever faced. Sakura leapt closer, hands already clapping together. "Sealing jutsu! Adamantine sealing chains!" Sprouting directly from Hidan's body, several glowing chains began growing in length, wrapping around him and reaching for the ground. Sakura had not practiced her Fuinjutsu much while she had been away from the village. Lord Jiraiya did not have time to teach her very much in the short time that she had been with him. Even since helping wake him up, she wanted to give him space to recover, and given his station, felt awkward approaching him so soon for further training. And now that Lady Tsunade had been taken away, she couldn't imagine his hurt. However, the longer she could pin Hidan down, the better, so she would use anything she could. "The hell is this?" Hidan shouted as he grunted in strain against the pinning seal. The three girls had moved in perfect tandem, a triangle of suppression and assault. Even had they fought a moving target, not many would have been able to keep the constant assault at bay. Hidan growled, his usual arrogance faltering as he used every ounce of willpower just to move his arms a few inches. It was certainly a powerful jutsu, but Sakura wasn't exactly sure in its execution. She knew it would break sooner or later, but for the time being, she would hold concentration as much as she could. "Tenten! Ino!" Sakura grunted, sliding her feet into a more stable stance as the other two ran to her. "I can't hold this for long. Prepare for another assault." "Don't worry, Sakura. I still have so much more in my arsenal." Tenten nodded, opening her pack and snapping out another scroll. "Just give me a countdown if you can." For all his durability and strange invincibility, even he was vulnerable to Fuinjutsu, unable to move, denied control. Sakura also had her binding chains jutsu, but that required so much more setup and required a proximity that she would be unable to pull off here. "It's coming!" Sakura warned, feeling the jutsu slip. It wasn't as draining as she thought, but probably because her control of it was too shaky. "Annoying little rats!" Hidan hissed, wiggling his head around as the only part of his body he could actually move easily. He still sounded entirely unconcerned with his predicament. From the sidelines, still straining to keep Kiba pinned, Sasuke watched with quiet calculation. "They've got him," he muttered under his breath. The pressure was mounting as Ino and Tenten dashed to Hidan's flanks for a pincer strike. For a brief, fragile moment, they had seized the advantage. But it was fragile. Sasuke knew it. Somewhere deep inside, even Kiba, though clouded by grief, would soon know it too. They weren't winning. This wasn't an impending victory. It was simply the first time Hidan was uncomfortable. And even as Sakura shouted orders, Tenten pivoted for another onslaught of ranged weaponry, and Ino prepared her technique to finish the cage, they all felt as if they were still out of their depth. He stood without sound or movement, as though he had been carved into the face of the wall itself. The long dark cloak that draped his shoulders stirred faintly in the shifting currents of the strengthening wind. It was simple in design, but unmistakable. Black fabric traced with crimson clouds. From a distance, he was faceless. From above, he was little more than a lone silhouette pressed against the sheer stone of Konoha's wall. No sentries had yet spotted him. No alarms had sounded. Even the whisper of his presence evaded detection, save for those who understood to look for such things. His head tilted slightly, eyes hidden beneath the low dip of his hood, as he gazed down at the disarrayed fight below. The clash of young ninja echoed faintly upward. Shouts, explosive bursts of chakra, the clash of steel on stone. He observed without urgency. He was not here for them. His gaze lifted to the rest of the village in the distance. The Kage faces, as far as they were, stood loud and proud, and he huffed exasperation at them. It was the first time he'd actually saw the monument. It really was every bit as showboaty as he was ever told. Below those cliff faces, he saw commotion. He could not hear the crowd from where he was, but he saw many tents erected and the occasional firework pop over the trees. If he so choose, he could erase their joy in an instant. However, as much as the suffering of Leaf lives might feed him some level of justice, he was no psychopath. He shifted with measured subtlety. He rotated on his heel against the vertical plane of the wall with casual grace, eyes lifting briefly to sweep the distant rooftops beyond. No threats, no interruptions. For now, the chaos below would proceed as intended, and Hiran could have his fun for just a little while longer. Yet his gaze lingered longer than necessary as it passed across Konoha's crowded streets far beyond the tree line. Quiet, peaceful streets, some of them. Colorful market banners still fluttered faintly in the world, blissfully unaware. The faint scent of festival foods drifted even this far. The sounds of laughter so distant they felt like echoes from another life. He frowned, but let the moment settle. Konoha. The village that had shaped so much of the world. The village that had shaped him once as well, however indirectly. Communications from Orochimaru relayed that there was only one signing left in this village. Jiraiya. Beside the Hokage, that man stood as the only threat to the Akatsuki's plans in the area. As secretive as villagers were about their ninja, the signing were known the world over. Jiraiya's name did not surface as bitter or affectionate for this man, simply present. He once thought of this village as a dream he could never reach. Now he looked upon it and its citizens with clarity and duty. His fingers tightened slightly beneath the folds of his sleeves, a reaction measured and immediately suppressed. He would not linger on sentiment, not now. The mission still stood before ghosts of memories. His attention drifted back to the fray below, sharpening again. The timing was delicate. The chaotic little battle below would end soon one way or another. His role was simple. Intervene only if necessary. Do not allow Konoha's young to seize control. Maintain the disruption. If any stronger foes appear, he would remove them. As if summoned by the thought, his head tilted faintly to the left. Movement. Subtle, rapid, controlled. 2 chakra signatures approaching swift from the west, just beyond the forest line. His eyes half-lidded in quiet assessment. Not genin, not civilians, not ordinary threats. He rolled the shoulder slightly, loosening tension that did not yet exist. "They've come," he murmured quietly, his voice soft and unbothered. He pulled his hood to distinctly cover his hair, and then he stilled once more, a sentinel on the wall, waiting for his pieces to enter the board. The air seemingly thinned as Kakashi and Guy neared the wall. They were both now fully silent as they weaved through the upper bows, eyes scanning sharply for any movement. The forest canopy gave way ahead, revealing a sheer, slate-gray stretch of stone, Konoha's inner wall face, climbing high toward the sky. The shaded cast cooled the earth below, cloaking the immediate area in muted half-light, and there, halfway up on the vertical surface, standing sideways upon the stone as if gravity itself deferred to him, stood a man. Not masked, not monstrous, just standing. His cloak immediately gave away his alignment. Akatsuki. Lord Jiraiya had warned that they would be more active sooner rather than later, but that was all he knew. He did not know what their specific intent was yet. His head tilted toward them as they approached, and he rolled up his sleeves to the elbows. There was no way he noticed them yet, was there? For a moment, Kakashi and Guy hung frozen on their tree branch, observing silently, hoping to regain their stealth. "That's no ordinary rogue ninja," Kakashi murmured, his voice low and immediate. "He reacted to our approach as my shouting gun picked up on his presence." Guy's eyes tightened. "So the Akatsuki are moving." No questions followed. There was no need. Every shinobi in the world knew the protocol when Akatsuki was sighted. Anbu were to engage immediately and not allow them to act freely. Without hesitation, they both leapt. Kakashi blurred right, Guy swept left, twin arcs of deadly precision closing in on the stranger with lethal intent. The man on the wall didn't flinch. He didn't ready a weapon, he didn't posture. Instead, he simply stepped to one side. The shift was impossibly minimal, less than a heartbeat, but it was all he needed. Guy's palm strike cleaved the air where his torso had been. Kakashi's kunai slipped harmlessly past his shoulder, grazing only wind. By the time both touched stone to rebound, the man had already turned, his back momentarily exposed, yet untouchable. His movement! Kakashi's shouting gun flared, but even its enhanced perception struggled. It's not speed, really, it's reaction, reflex. Before they could adjust, the stranger raised his hands lazily, fingers curling into a casual, almost bored seal. "Water style, geyser claw." The wall beneath Kakashi and Guy rippled unnaturally, bulging outward like flesh reacting to a heartbeat. A jagged claw of compressed water exploded from the stone, slashing horizontally as though a giant had swung a blade through the air. Kakashi and Guy barely disengaged in time, flipping high into the air, but even that wasn't enough. The man's hands shifted again, fingers sliding seamlessly into another combination of seals. Water style, cascade piercing. Dozens of thin, needle-like streams erupted upward from the inner wall face, shooting directly toward them mid-air, giving no room to evade conventionally. "His control is ridiculous!" Kakashi hissed, twisting between the jets. One struck him in the hip and tossed him from the wall. Guy dropped, using his heavy legs to deflect and dash through the smaller gaps, his speed barely outrunning the tailored assault. He landed lower on the wall as Kakashi plummeted to the trees below. After just seconds of recovery, Kakashi dashed from the trees to the wall once more and joined Guy, as both were forced into a less than advantageous angle. The man remained still. He hadn't even moved from his place on the wall, no flourish, no wasted effort. Kakashi's chest rose slightly as he recalculated. His eyes narrowed. "Guy, don't assume anything of him. He's not showing off and he's not chasing us. He's simply responding to our proximity, like we're a mild inconvenience." Guy's fists tightened. "His reactions are so fast. He had established his authority so early in the fight. He's not just fast, he's simply doing what's necessary to evade us." As if hearing them, though he clearly didn't care, the man finally spoke, voice calm and carrying down the wall as water continued to swirl faintly beneath his sandals. "I have no issue with Konoha's defenders," he said, his words without venom. "You should turn back. This is not your concern." Guy immediately bristled. "Not our concern? Is he serious?" Kakashi, however, saw the implication immediately. Now that they were so close, he had spotted the kids fighting another man below. Not in the Akatsuki garb, but seeing how he was being guarded by this man, it only made sense. "You two are in league," Kakashi said coldly, his eyes flickering down again to where Hidan could be seen, skirmishing wildly with the triumphant 12 far below. The man didn't deny it either. He merely shifted his footing slightly, the water beneath him gathering steadily again. A quiet storm, barely audible. "Yes," the man answered, finally pulling back his hood, revealing a flare of orange hair. "He's part of my purpose." Guy's teeth clenched. "Then we can't let you continue." We can't overpower him like this. Kakashi interrupted sharply, already recalculating. If we push too hard, he might drown us both. We still don't know the scope of his abilities. He wasn't being hyperbolic either. The scale and precision of the water techniques already displayed suggested that one could level this entire quadrant of forest if he simply decided to stop being subtle. Still, they had no choice. Konoha was under assault, and they couldn't let him freely assist Hidan any longer. Kakashi raised his hand, preparing a Raikiri variant, while Guy's aura began to burn hotter and hotter as he settled into a combat stance worthy of opening the inner gates. But Yahiko's eyes remained placid, almost sad. "Regrettable," he said softly, and with a snap of his hands, the sky suddenly swirled with clouds from nothingness. Above them, cloud pulled into existence, layered and compounded unnaturally fast as moisture answered Yahiko's unspoken summons. In seconds, a violent pressure pressed downward, the beginning of a controlled downpour that would dwarf even natural storms. Water flooded downward, directly onto the chaos below. The cheers of the crowd still rang pleasantly through the Chunin exam area. Minato Namikaze sat with casual ease, arms relaxed on his knees. From his elevated seat, he had the perfect view of the ring below and of the sprawling sea of spectators that surrounded it. Children pointed eagerly, parents whispered predictions. Jonin kept quiet notes of emerging talents. The proctor had returned once more to the field after that especially short match. "The next match will now commence. Will the following competitors please come to the arena? Choji Akimichi and Rock Lee." The proctor's voice carried over the stadium. Choji's eyes were fire as he leapt to his feet and left his stall and headed for the stadium. Lee saluted with gleaming confidence and exited his stall at the same time, forcing them to walk shoulder to shoulder through the hall on the way to the stadium. "I do hope that we can have a glorious match, Choji." Lee smiled as they walked to the stadium. "Let us see if we can bring the audience another amazing sight." "You can't even use ninjutsu," Choji muttered. "How glorious could a match like that even be?" "What?" Lee nearly stumbled at the sudden insult. "Choji, have I done something to offend you?" "You should still be in the academy, given what you can't do," Choji continued without reservation. "I make up for it in what I can, though." Lee grinned. He had faced negativity his whole life. This much wouldn't faze him, but he still wondered what Choji's angle was. "The point is that you have an unfair advantage from these privileges," Choji said, shrugging and shaking his head. "It was an unfair match from the start. If I knew I could graduate from academy with just one subset of skills, of course I would have zeroed in on ninjutsu." "That is unfair, Choji," Lee defended himself. "I have other knowledge as well." But their words were at an end as they entered into the arena. Choji hoped that his words would anger Lee. This was a match between ninja, not between a ninja and a monk, or whatever Lee thought of himself as. And if he learned anything from Lee, it was that his newfound ability didn't actually work if he was emotionally compromised. Minato looked down at them as they slowly took their place in the arena and offered a faint smile, though his mind was elsewhere. It was always elsewhere. Even as he gave outward attention to the arena, waves of his sensory chakra spread unseen in every direction, soft, gentle pulses washing through the hidden leaf. Through homes, through trees, through walls and battlements, through people, the sensations that returned were familiar. They were a language only he spoke fluently after years of careful attunement. Naruto. Minato's breath caught for a moment at realizing that Naruto was no longer in the arena. However, he was still within the village, so Minato dismissed it quickly. It was impossible not to sense Naruto. His immense chakra was like an island that threatened to cloud the read of Minato's sensory ability. Naruto's chakra, however, was steady but distant, not raging, not bright, dormant, unconscious. He was very near home, in the forest behind. Why was he there? Taking a nap in the woods? Regardless, safe for now. Next was Sasuke. His presence was razor sharp, like a needle amongst the waves, so honed anyone lesser could have missed him. There was no chaos out of him, no turmoil. He was deadly focused, a blade honed to its finest edge. Minato noted him near the far east sector. Kiba, usually quiet nowadays, withdrawn, but something stirred now, wild and churning, fractured, furious. Unlike the others, Kiba's chakra felt jagged, the serenity broken by a rising animalistic havoc. Him, Sakura, and Tenten were also in the same area, moving, weaving, tactical chakra patterns, darting and fast, with Ino and Inoichi? No, Inoichi was different, but Minato could not quite figure out what the difference was. But what about their emergency? Minato furrowed his brow and shook his head. A sliver of anger flitted through his head. Of shame, too. He blinked and increased his focus as his eyes watched Choji and Lee bounce around the battlefield. There were 3 more signatures, Kakashi and Guy together in the same area. One more, foreign, dense, intent layered within intent. Difficult to read. He clenched his teeth. He had memorized every ninja of the leaf within Konoha's walls, as well as the few visitors. These 2 were ghosts among the living. Their presence was not raw or clumsy. It was cold, defined, self-assured. Not infiltrators in the casual sense. Hunters, predators with clear purpose. Minato did not move. Choji and Lee continued clashing as Minato thought about the ramifications of whatever brawl was taking place across the village. How could such storms brew in the face of this merrymaking? Kakashi and Guy were his best Anbu at the moment, so he would leave it to them. Water came down like judgment. It wasn't natural rain and it wasn't weather. The downpour erupted as if the heavens themselves cracked open. Sheets of chakra-laden water cascading downward, dense enough to blur vision and drown sound in place of its own. A waterfall from the sky. Trees shuddered and splintered under the weight, leaves shorn clean from the branches and plastered to earth in an instant. For the triumphant 12 trying to control Hidan's movements, it was disastrous. Sakura, previously holding Hidan down, was first to react. She ducked aside as a heavy torrent smashed through her previous position, shattering wood like brittle glass. "Keep pressure on him!" she shouted, wiping water from her eyes, voice already ragged. Beside her, Tenten hurled weighted projectiles upward, only for them to be batted down midair by the dense rain. "It's no good!" Tenten shouted. "The water's turning everything to sludge!" Ino moved through the water as if it were air, as Isobu locked in with her and granted her its own affinity. "Do your best to keep formation. Isobu refuses to help you too. This guy might bolt." But Hidan was not planning on bolting. No. The moment chaos erupted from above, Hidan grinned wide, bloodlust flickering behind his eyes like coals catching wind. "Finally!" He laughed, his voice nearly drowned out as he rolled his shoulders, freed from Sakura's conjured chains. "You annoying brats were starting to piss me off." He surged forward, mud and water parting as his heavy steps crushed puddles into craters. His scythe spun around him in a lazy arc as he advanced directly through the disrupted defense. Sakura moved to intercept, but was nearly flattened by a spiraling wave that collapsed to the ground near her feet, courtesy of the Akatsuki above, fighting Guy and Kakashi. She was forced to retreat to higher ground. Tenten fell back instinctively, desperately trying to maintain distance. That only left Sasuke and Kiba. Center stage still locked together. Kiba snarled, thrashing against Sasuke's grip. The rain had soaked them both, turning their standoff brutal and raw. "Let me go!" Kiba roared, his chakra surging enough that Sasuke felt heat emanate from him. "You will die!" Sasuke snapped back quietly, struggling to maintain control even with the Sharingan's predictive edge. "I don't care!" Kiba bellowed. "He killed Akamaru!" Sasuke's arms tightened around Kiba's torso, locking his limbs painfully. He grit his teeth, muscles straining. He wasn't listening. If Sasuke just eased up even a little bit, but the hesitation had cost them. Hidan was there in a blink. Mud and water trailed from his cloak as he stepped into striking distance. Scythe raised. Twisted grin plastered across his face. Sasuke snarled, snapping a quick, hard punch just under Kiba's ribs, striking his liver and causing his ally to buckle and wheeze. Twirling from his lock with Kiba, Sasuke spun with a kunai in hand, barely enough time to catch the scythe falling to him. The clang echoed, steel grinding in the rain. Sasuke didn't give Hidan the satisfaction of shock. He pushed forward, forcing the scythe upward with a sharp flick of his wrist, twisting the trajectory off course. In that same instant he dropped low, his free hand glowing faintly blue as his chakra sharpened into lightning along his fingers. He struck with precision, a surgical strike toward Hidan's abdomen, chakra buzzing violently at the edge of his fingertips. The force behind the stab would have split stone. But Hidan twisted unnaturally, fluid despite his size, his free hand catching Sasuke's wrist just before the impact. "Ooh, smart," Hidan cooed, his grip tightening like a vice. "You know how to kill properly. You're not scared of guts and gore like the rest of them." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He didn't flinch, didn't even tug against the hold. Instead, his Sharingan whirred sharply as he read Hidan's stance. With surgical coldness, he shifted his weight, snapping a knee into Hidan's hip, disrupting balance just enough to slip free. In the same breath, he surged upward, spinning his kunai in a blur and dragging the blade across Hidan's cheek, shallow but deliberate, testing, observing. The wound didn't bleed as all the others before it, and Hidan laughed. "This guy," Sasuke muttered, gaze darkening. He didn't know how to fight someone so unafraid of injury. It was completely antithetical to how all ninja fought. They were meant to have as few injuries and losses as possible, but this guy welcomed it. Sasuke circled immediately, maintaining distance. He could land blows, he could cut tendons, break bones, but something was wrong. The rain drowned out chakra clarity, but his instincts screamed caution. In Hidan's very fighting style of suicidal fervor, without anything else included, bred discomfort, disgust, and a strange feeling of fright. Sasuke knew that if he too dropped judgment and attempted to fight reckless, he'd play right into whatever trap Hidan's ability was. Sasuke's fingers twitched, prepared to summon Katsuyu, also concerned that she wouldn't be able to help here, and his body hesitated. Precision was vital here. His mind raced for an answer, watching Hidan approach slowly, the scythe dragging in the mud. Behind him, Kiba was beginning to recover from the liver shot. Sasuke's eyes danced across the field in desperation for a faster answer. Hidan, Sakura behind, Tenten and Ino on a nearby tree bow, Kiba recovering just out of reach. The girls couldn't get to Kiba before he would recover. Kakashi and Guy were distracted by the other Akatsuki. This moment of simultaneous calculations cost him. Hidan surged forward abruptly. No telegraph, just savage instinct. Sasuke backpedaled, blade raised, but Hidan's scythe came faster than expected through the heavy rain. Sasuke saw his own death through his Sharingan. He should have been sharper. He should have been faster. He should have been better. Hidan's great scythe came down in a gleaming arc of screeching violence, thudding to a sudden halt. Caught, bare-handed by another. Water and mist parted like curtains, and between Sasuke and death stood Minato Namikaze. His grip was relaxed, fingers curled effortlessly around the deadly weapon's shaft. No strain, no urgency, only absolute, impenetrable calm. Hidan's eyes bulged. Shit! Minato's gaze ignored him. Instead, his sharp calculating eyes slowly traced upward to the figure perched comfortable on the wall far above. Yahiko. Only then did Minato finally speak, voice low, perfectly even amidst the false storm. 2 intruders confirmed, he said softly to himself. You do not belong here. Hidan tore his scythe free with a violent yank, staggering back a step. Damn Hokage! Should have figured we'd get your attention pulling all this noise. Minato didn't answer. He stood still, raindrops streaking down his face and cloak. His presence radiated terrifying control, as though even the storm dared not strike him directly. Sasuke stared up at him in disbelief, lungs heaving. In the past, when Minato had protected him, he wasn't fully cognizant. Would he now bear witness to the battle perfection of a Kage in battle? His Sharingan twirled and glowed with the excitement as his adrenaline reached a new peak past the threat of death he had just been saved from. Kiba sagged slightly, the rage in him paused, replaced by sheer awe. Above them all, Yahiko regarded Minato with quiet focus, neither aggressive nor flustered. For a silent instant, time seemed to stop. Konoha's walls, the flooded forest floor, 2 monstrous enemies, and Minato alone and unshaken, standing between chaos and his people. The tide had shifted. I have a match to get back to, Minato said aloud, and a festival to enjoy. Let's make this quick. Sakura felt like she had forgotten how to breathe as she watched Minato stand easily within Hidan's reach. His presence was enough to still the Akatsuki's attack altogether. The falling torrents even slowed as the man on the wall had stopped his surge of jutsu. Lord Fourth, Sasuke stammered. If the one in front of you gets your blood, he can kill you instantly. Noted, Minato answered, his head slowly turning back to Hidan, whose already pale complexion seemed to turn white as parchment. Even the deathless could fear something, it seemed. Minato's head then swiveled to Akamaru's body, and he grimaced, glancing down at Kiba. That was not a good idea. To kill an Inuzuka's companion. Hidan opened his mouth as if to give a smart-ass answer, but he was still struggling with the prospect of actually fighting a Kage-level opponent, and no sound was uttered. Minato's bare hand hung loosely by his side. Moments before, it had caught and halted death itself. Now it rested calmly, fingers relaxed, empty of wisdom or seal. He did not assume a battle stance. He did not raise his voice, but his presence alone seemed to push outward. For his leaf subordinates, they felt a great canopy of safety, and a growing sense of strength and confidence returned to them. For his enemies, they felt only an ominous wave behind his cold calm. Hidan took a step back, his casual bravado blunted like a blade striking stone. He swung his scythe once, idly testing the air, no longer confident in his free rein. Above, on the vertical wall face, Yahiko's expression had subtly changed. He was no less composed, no less assured, yet his focus had sharpened. Gone was the detached observer. Now his blue eyes tracked Minato with quiet precision, a shogi master recognizing the opponent who could finally threaten the board. Sasuke found his feet and reconfirmed the grip he had of his own sword. He would protect himself and act only if the Hokage called for him. Kakashi and Guy had settled on the vertical face of the wall as well, staying well clear, anticipating Minato's impending charge. Sakura's fingers tightened on her kunai, her sharp mind working behind cautious eyes. Even with Lord Hokage's appearance, their enemies were complete unknowns. They weren't reckless, nor bombastic. They were calculated and composed. Dangerous. Her guard would not fall, though. She would wait for the Hokage's word before re-engaging. Tenten panted from the rush of seeing the Hokage appear as their literal savior. She had forgotten herself in his appearance and dropped her guard. But with the relief, she had also found her hands had stilled after panic, and so drew the Hiramakere just in case. Ino felt Isobu's support recede with the Hokage's arrival. The Hokage was the one who jailed Isobu within Ino, so she felt a strange love for her Hokage mixed with disgust and hate from Isobu. Kakashi stood soaked with his blade drawn, watching Yahiko adjusting his grip subtly. He didn't speak his sensei's name. He didn't shout orders or offer praise. He simply observed Sharingan twirling slowly. Beneath his mask, he grinned. It had been a while since he had last fought alongside his teacher. He wondered if he'd be able to keep up even a little bit now. However, both Akatsuki's attention had entirely pivoted to Minato, as if Kakashi and Guy were such small threats as to be ignored. It spoke volumes of how powerful they might be. When killers turned so weary of one individual, it didn't mean they were afraid. It meant they were preparing for something serious. Even Guy, normally the loudest and most straightforward of them all, did not celebrate. He stood tensely beside Kakashi, breathing steady, eyes fixed on their foe in front of them. "They're reading him," Guy whispered. Kakashi nodded once, "and deciding how to kill him." The words weren't said bitterly, they were a statement of fact. Minato himself did not seem concerned. His gaze flicked from Hidan, reckless, bloodthirsty, unsettled, to Yahiko, poised, calculating, unshaken. He spoke without raising his voice, but his words cut through to all present. "Back me up, but stay out of my way." It was an order to the leaf shinobi around him, and they bristled with courage and recalibrated focus. Yahiko's head finally turned back to Kakashi and Guy, though he disregarded the teenagers around Minato. His shoulders rose and fell as if he heaved a heavy sigh. Slamming his hand into the face of the wall, Yahiko performed a sudden summoning jutsu. It was so fast, Kakashi knew he couldn't have interrupted that technique, even if he was forewarned. Exploding out from the technique on either side of him stood two large men with great blades. Unlike Yahiko and Hidan, everyone recognized these two: Zabuza Momochi and Kisame Hoshigaki. Neither of the summoned swordsmen said a word, as if they knew exactly why they were summoned. Minato blinked at the summon. "Kakashi, cover this one with Kiba," he instructed, keeping his eyes on Yahiko, but referring to Hidan behind him. "Guy and Sakura take Kisame, Sasuke and Tenten take Zabuza. Leave the last one to me. I will help you all after I finish him off." "The gall!" Kisame laughed at Minato's untouched confidence. "They shall take us nowhere. We're here for you." It was odd. Even with the addition of the two infamous swordsmen of the mist, the leaf shinobi following Minato's orders felt no less confident. Sakura felt like she could take on even such a high-ranking criminal as Kisame while fighting alongside Minato. And when they won this fight, they would deliver a great blow to the power of the Akatsuki. Sasuke measured his tanto to the massive claymore in Zabuza's hands. He would make it work. Kakashi would keep Kiba in check while sorting out Hidan's mysterious tricks. Minato's presence stabilized the field. What came next would decide everything. Kakashi fingered the Raijin kunai in his pack. Of course, Minato left one with him, a scroll with Sasuke and an affinity with Naruto's. Normally, these items were in case Minato needed to get to them, but Minato was already here. The blade gleamed in the sunlight as Kakashi felt out the tension and released it at Yahiko. Naturally, the orange-haired man bobbed his head and easily avoided it, but not before Minato suddenly appeared at the knife with a swinging kick that blasted Kisame toward Guy and his other leg falling hard onto the back of Zabuza's neck, launching him to the ground below. Instantly singling Yahiko out, Minato's gaze turned from calm and calculating to fierce and focused as he turned midair to face Yahiko head-on. And that's the end of today's episode. Action is so hard to get right. I wanted to be able to describe some of the tight choreography between multiple characters, but after I'm finished writing it, it just feels like total chaos to me. I know what I envisioned, but did it actually come out that way? But forget all that. Disaster has come to Konoha, and in less subtle form than how Sasori approached Sunagakure. Choji and Lee are fighting in the ring, unaware, with all the audience and the festivities, that calamity reigns just beyond their sight. To some who try to keep me honest with continuity, I did make it clear that Minato gave a scroll with his mark to Sasuke a very, very long time ago. I made that reference as far back as episode 40. So, it took me a while to properly cash that one in. And for full transparency, I did sort of teeter on the edge of how serious I wanted this fight to be. My very first conception of this episode did not involve the two swordsmen at all, but it also involved a lot of confusion with what I was going to have the Triumphant 12 busy with. With this adjustment, all will be busy, and in very interesting ways. To be clear, this was not a last-minute decision. The way I usually plan is like a tree. I started with the main idea, the thick trunk, and then think of anywhere from 1 to 15 different paths or branches the chapter could ultimately go in. So the swordsman idea was always there, I just wasn't sure how or if I should include it. We haven't seen Zabuza, or rather heard Zabuza, since Hinata's time skip. That's a long time for him to be gone. And among the swordsmen, he's obviously a fan favorite, but he doesn't have the same relationship with Kakashi here as he did in canon. So I felt spicy and put Sasuke with Tenten against him. This is also a two birds one stone situation. Minato's calculations took things like the special properties of the blades into account. I refuse to believe that in canon, no one knows how these swords work when they are wielded by such infamous people. Like when Samehare's chakra eating ability is introduced in canon, and no one had any idea up to that point. Like, what? How would no one learn that over the years, possibly decades, of the blade being in use for bloody wars and assassinations? Things like that make no sense to me. And it's not like it makes Samehara any less dangerous to face even knowing that. That blade can consume your chakra just by being near you? That's a weird sword no matter how you cut it. Is it actually a sword? Or is it some strange animal? Like, is it like Funkfried, from One Piece, Spandam's sword that somehow consumed a devil fruit and can become an elephant? I'm extrapolating, obviously, but you get my point. Samehara is just strange. I was having a Discord conversation about Spiral Zetsu too. Kishimoto puts in random characters and entities and never seems to explain them. Like, why is Spiral Zetsu special? No one knows. The end. Good night, everybody. In other news, where have I been? Well, that first week, when my episode was meant to release, I worked 74 hours in 5 days. I only had time to come home and go to sleep. I'm not the type of person who can just abandon people at work in tough times, so even to my own detriment, I'm right there in the thick of it. And then on Saturday, after that intense week, I got sick from overworking, and that lasted nearly a whole week itself, putting off the episode even more. When I tried to record the rest of the episode, my voice suddenly just caved. After delegating people for 15 hours a day, and then going home to try and record for 1.5 hours, turns out was starting to wear on my voice. I went to the doctor when I wasn't getting better, and after explaining to him my typical week versus that crazy hard week, and after he checked me over, turns out I'm overworking myself too hard in general, and I need to ease up, so episodes are going to slow down a bit on that alone. My voice is taking a pounding because I work in a plant, so while I'm at work, it's not just talking to people, it's shouting so we can hear each other over the machinery and our earplugs. Between that and these concentrated sessions of reading the episodes out, it's just the type of excess that my voice cannot take so constantly. However, I also specified in Discord that I would be super busy for the next 6 weeks. My work is getting a brand new system put in that replaces a lot of paperwork with digital work. And as part of that management team, I'm required to take part in every single course, instead of just 1 or 2 depending on my field of expertise. That's what's causing a lot of this intense overtime. More time in the classroom learning means sacrificed time that we have to then make up for later to finish the workday. Honestly, it's a very disorganized process that the company could have put together so much better, but it is what it is. And I've returned to working on my original work. I have a novel that I started roughly 10 years ago, but other than that first year, never really spent an insane amount of time developing it. But in the last month or two, I've started giving that a lot more of my attention. Ironically, it's the built-in discipline that I've developed with the rewrite that's allowing me to stick with improving my original work. I've been thinking about if I want to publicize that story on YouTube or not. I need to first trademark the name and copyright the work. That's easy to do, I have to do that. Both are easy processes, but if I start sharing bits of my story on YouTube, that will actually make it pretty hard to publish, unless I self-publish. Publishing houses tend to have a lot of restrictive rules regarding sharing the work yourself, so that they can control the advertisement and distribution. Nonetheless, for aspiring writers everywhere, I think I can bring a lot to the table to help them develop their works as well. So if there's any writers out there who need help developing a magic system, or their characters, or their world, I'd happily oblige and make a video to help along with that process. None of this is to say that the rewrite is stopping. It's just for the next little while that it might release every 2 weeks. And my personal work isn't even close to reaching publish level, but if I can stick with it, I might have a done novel in a year or 2. And this is a series. It's going to be probably 7 to 9 books. And it goes without saying, I put immeasurably more work into my original story than I do into the rewrite. The folder of only Notepad and Word documents that contain all the little notes and chapters of my story is 45 megabytes. That's text files. 45 megabytes. I'm the type who builds the lore first, the world, the characters, the timeline. And then I get into writing the thing. So I'm still skimming through and making sure there's no plot holes or plot contrivances. As much as I'd love to get this story published, I'd also like to avoid having a release and regretting something about it. So I'm doing it slowly and deliberately and correctly, crossing all my T's and dotting all my I's, so to speak. I love seeing that despite my absence, the Discord remains alive and active. Normalcy shall return soon, but for the next little while, it could even be potentially 2 months. It's going to be a little bit chaotic. And it's nothing to do. I'm not even burnt out or anything on the rewrite. I just have a lot going on, and apparently I have to rest my voice more often than I have been. So it's all these things working together to slow me down, but I'm not stopping ever until this thing is done. And we're close, relatively speaking. I mean, I'm probably, I don't know. I keep telling people that I'm about 2/3 done. That's probably true. I mean, maybe 3/4, 2/3. I don't know. People keep saying, I only have 2 or 3 arcs left. Only is the relative term there, because the arcs could each be 30 episodes long. Like, you don't know. So stop thinking pessimistically. This could be a little while yet before the story's done. And I think that's it for today. The sky's the limit.